it's Jennifer here from Belladonna's Botanicals. And in this video, I want to talk about this is more of a piece. This is based on a lot of questions and comments I get and hesitation that people have, especially when they're looking from other areas of practice. It's not to besmirch anyone else's, spiritual leanings, but I want to talk a little bit about there we go. I want to talk a little bit about what exactly is, how. So, what I want to talk about is I get a lot of like, I don't want to say negative feedback. Sometimes it is, but occasionally I get that, hoity toity on, well, I walk the path of light and, icky, I don't touch the dark magics. Was this made with, especially with questions of my brother, well, was this made with black magic or, dark magic and stuff like that in a very derisive kind of way. And what I wanted to make a video about this because I get a little tired of explaining it over and over again. So I wanted to make a more just something that I can point to, like, hey, here's a little bit about what this kind of magic is. Now, for me, I'm actually working on, as of last weekend, I'm working on writing a book and developing a sort of integrated magical system. That's all I'm going to say about it now. In its very early stages, but I mean, yes, I am by if you want to if categorization, I am a demonologist. I work primarily with the demonic divine. Am I dark and evil and nefarious and malicious? No. Do I do defensive magic like everyone else does when they need to? Yes, I do. I'm not particularly I really don't have the time and um interest in petty cursing. Um but you know, cursing also can be a form of protective magic. If someone's smacking you across the face, you just go, "Okay, thank you. I walk the path of light." Um, mm, you know, no, you're gonna defend yourself. So, what I want to talk the first talking point here is about the types of spirits we work with. And then I'm going to go into some further things about this because I want to challenge people's assumptions. Because, okay, like I am obviously in the left hand path. I work primarily demonology, but also there's interwoven aspects of Luciferianism, Satanism, black magic, grimoire stuff, etc. But not for nothing. Also, you see, Reiki master. I've done other types of energy healing. I am an advanced certified crystal healer, which is pretty woo-woo, love and light if you're coming down to it. So I integrate different aspects of magic into my practice. I'm not here trying to, create, be like, ooh, I'm a badass sorcerer and, trying to F shit up all over the place. What I do what works for me, and that is it sometimes it's not that it hurts my feelings, but it's just like there's a lot of misinformation out there. Unfortunately, a lot of it does come from our organized religious traditions and indoctrinations, sometimes from religious trauma and our learnings. A lot of that I had to get over myself. I understand. So what I try to emphasize when it comes to spirits, and this is from the perspective of a demonologer, I realize not everyone might agree with this or feel this way, but all spirits are considered to be divine intelligences, whether they're angels, whether they're demons, whether they're god forms, gods, goddesses, any type of deities, so on and so forth. So I'm just moving my notes over a little. So, um, now, when we're talking about spirits, any type of spirit, whether it's angelic, whether it's demonic, whether it's a goddess, that there are multiple aspects to it. When you look at a goddess like Astarte, goddess of love and war, emphasis and war. But there's also other aspects, beauty, sexuality, and different attributes. And you can work with Astarte in other ways. Like if I would work with her for healing or love or something like that. I d- I personally don't work with the war an aspect of Astarte, but I could because most of these entities are dual kind of natures. So what I the other thing I like to emphasize here is how we work with, let's just say, the broad spirit world of divine intelligences is based upon our intentions. As they say, like attracts like. So a spirit's never going to ask or demand you harm yourself or another, obviously, unless it's a defensive measure to protect yourself in those cases. But again, it's more likely to protect yourself. But I digress. So if I'm working with demons, it's not for nefarious, evil, whatever purposes. I've worked with them for and healed in ways that I did not think was possible. Now, of course, there are some people who work with spirits for nefarious reasons, and they get the lessons learned. Oftentimes, if they're going to learn the lesson, more than like harm is going to come to the other person. They might like try to claim some street cred for it, but human ego be like that. In some of those cases, speaking of human ego, they are just working with egoic uh egregore thought form projections and calling it a demon or whatever. That said, some spirits can be unwieldy, like spirits of the deceased, feeder spirits, negative thought forms, and the likes. I used to always joke that I have my own worst poltergeist because, like, your energy can also create, you know, if you have chaotic energy, can also create chaotic situations in your life, and I've been guilty of that. So those can tend to be a little harder to manage. So, I mean, the only times I've actually had trouble with spirits is usually someone's familiar, incubi or succubi, that kind of stuff. That's really the only times I've had any major issues with spiritual attacks from other people. So generally, I haven't attracted. Ooh, got really, there we go. Generally, I haven't attracted, even though I'm a demonologer and I work primarily with the demonic divine. It's okay here. I'm like, my life's pretty good. I can't complain. Um, so moving on from that is like I like to tell people to work with the spirits they feel comfortable with. And and sometimes others show up over time. So like for me, I came into my practice. I had been like a very pragmatic atheist agnostic for a very long time. So it took me a while to um ease into work accepting the spirit world and working with it. So I started out where I felt comfortable. So I first started working with Lilith and then Lucifer, and I think after that Belial and Azazel and Abaddon and a few others. And some I worked with a lot more intensely, some little bits here and there, but other spirits just come up for me over time. Um, so it doesn't always mean that um and I've had spirits show up from other traditions that are not my own. I'm very respectful of that. So a lot of the fear and hesitance I see people have towards the left-hand path, specifically the demonic divine, tends to come from a lot of misinformation and the human need to categorize things in the binary of good and bad, dark and light. Um, in that sense. So once we move beyond that binary and duality, the spirit world becomes much easier place to navigate. So what I want to talk about next is how we view different spirits, because I see that there is still a lot of fear-based, when it comes to left-hand path, when it comes to demons, and things like that. And one of the books, I honestly, this should be required reading for everyone, not just spiritual people, not just left-hand path people, I mean, this should be a book that is required reading. It's a scholarly book. It's not written from any, from a satanic perspective. It's not written from like a love and light metaphysical new age perspective. It's written from a scholarly perspective. And that is, it's The Origin of Satan, read this, how Christians Demonize Jews, Pagans, and Heretics by Elaine Pagels. This book should really be read by everyone because you will understand. This is written from a scholarly historical perspective and also a theological perspective. I'll just give you who Elaine Pagels is. She is a professor of religion at Princeton University. She received her doctorate from Harvard University. She's taught in other colleges in the departments of religion, at Barnard, Columbia. She's responsible for editing several of the texts from the Nag Hammadi library, and has written some other books on like, what's the other? There's another one I have. I think it's an audiobook on Revelations and like the Gnostic Gospels. So this is from a very academic perspective, but this is definitely worth reading. Gotta hold it up. So what we have been told demons are, we're basically still victims of early Christian propaganda, because the vast majority of what we are demons, and emphasis on that funny word demonize, there's a reason that's a word, because the pre-Christian pagan gods and goddesses were demonized. This is how Astarte, goddess of love and war, becomes the male goetic spirit, the demon Astaroth. And now some people work with Astaroth is in the feminine aspect, but typically in the Grimoire traditions, Astaroth is a male demon. So you have this goddess of love and war who is now demonized into Astaroth. So that is, and I'm not going to get entirely, I might do this in a separate section because I might have to research more. But when we talk about left-hand path, right-hand path, that actually originates, I believe, from Hinduism. I know the story. I just don't know well enough to speak on it extemporaneously without talking points. So of course, what I want to emphasize beyond that is, in any spiritual path, you have people who cause harm, whether it's intentional or unintentional. And I've seen a lot of that on both sides of the spectrum, whether it's the love and light, the new age gurus, or whether it is on the left-hand path side. But again, that comes down to the person and their intentions more than the spirits they're working with or claiming to work with. I get this a lot. So I kind of really, my hope is to foster better understanding, because at the end of the day, and this is the message I get from all the spirits that just show up all the time for me, is we are more connected than disconnected, and the spirit world is all connected itself. It's just, if you want to think about, visualize it kind of in vibrational spheres. So you might have like the demonic divine may be a little closer to the physical sphere than, say, like the angelic. It doesn't make one lesser or greater. Some people might argue that. There's a lot of new age stuff that is just so hinged on working with the angelic. And let me tell you this much. My guardian angel, Agiel, has a body count. Yeah, of course, I get the weird ass like guardian angel. I don't get the little fluffy bunny angel. No, I get the one that's like responsible for like alien, like he's very alien looking. So like a lot of people, I think he's credited for like people thinking they've been kidnapped by aliens, stuff like that. But he's a little more on the fallen side, but still like, yeah, like I noticed a pattern of, I'm like, wow, like the people who really wronged me, yeah, a couple of them are on long term on permanent dirt naps. Yeah. And or when my anger has gotten away from me and I've not done anything magically. I always joke my guardian angel's a mafioso and will bust up y'all kneecaps. So, it again, angels can be kind of dicks. Angels can be just as destructive as demons can be, as any god or goddess. This is the thing. It doesn't, angels aren't mutually exclusive. It's all good and, everything's all, pure and mighty. Some of that does come down into ways, and I really challenge you to look at your perspectives, because there's a little bit of an ick there of, like, a superiority complex, that you're better than everyone else, and checking your ego no matter what your path is, highly recommended. So, the next thing I wanna talk about, and this is probably gonna be a little bit more on the controversial side of things, but this also does relate to the book that I aforementioned, The Origin of Satan. I really would like to see people stop using the terms demonic and satanic as a slur. Often I hear these terms thrown around in spiritual circles, using them, demonic or satanic, as a slur to describe anything or anyone that has different belief systems, anything dark as opposed to light, angels versus demons, anything negative, monotheism versus literally everything else, and the practices of other cultures, down to just not liking something or lacking an understanding of it. For instance, I recently saw someone claim that working with goddesses is satanic. I threw some Bible quotes at them, which completely went over their heads. So, because they didn't even know what I was talking about. So, describing working with goddesses, any goddess. This can be, Athena, Aphrodite, whether, Lilith, Kali, anything. That was all categorized as satanic, according to this person. Um, Again, highly suggest reading this book so you understand what I'm talking about here. Um, Here's the thing. When we're using these terms like demonic and satanic as a slur, it is deeply rooted in racism, anti Semitism, and pre Christian spiritual and cultural erasure. And that needs to stop, please. Um, it's it's frustrating sometimes to me, because I'm a good person. I'm a good natured person. Yeah, if you fuck around, you're going to find out. But, for the most part, not evil, not, whatever. I just have different ways of doing things and different practices. Do I love my family? Of course. Do I want to cause harm to people for no reason? Of course not. I mean, who's got time? Um, but I really challenge you, if you're someone watching this from the outside who isn't a practitioner, like, it is okay to describe something as, if you're describing Satanism as Satanism, that's fine. Um, there is a lot of, and I will be honest, if you're watching this from a non left hand path perspective, we don't even agree on what Satan is, because you have theistic Satanism and non theistic Satanism. You have, people who believe, there's the thought that Satan is just a title meaning adversary. Satan has been ascribed to many different, whether is it Lucifer, Beelzebub, Shamyaza, blah, 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 down the list. I tend to think of it more as a deific mask for, the demonic in that sense. But when you're talking about things as being demonic and satanic because you don't like them, just know that you're that is coming from deeply rooted racism, anti-Semitism, and pre-Christian spiritual and cultural erasure. I said it twice, so you get the point, because that is where all that comes from. How things got demonized, why we look at these things in such, stark binary contrast. So why is this important to me? So I want to foster a greater understanding in reaching across the spiritual aisle, as it were, because, like I said, it's all connected. We're all connected. Um, it's, when I look at, there's so much that was lost from pre-Christian, whether you're looking at Mesopotamian, Babylonian, pre-Canaanite, Phoenician, on down the line, a lot of that was through all of that, a lot of that was destroyed and taken from us. And, you know, to keep fostering that same thing is just fostering more spiritual and cultural erasure. And to me, that's something I take very personally because, okay, so cultural heritage wise, I am Eastern European. Much of Slavic witchcraft and folk magic was lost through the rise of Catholicism. Now, just a quick little history rejoinder because people do not understand that Eastern Europe and Western Europe are very, very different places. Um, they may share the same landmass on a continent, but very different. So Roman Catholicism went the Western Europe route. Byzantine Catholicism or Greek Catholicism went the Eastern European up into Russia route. So things got syncretized in a lot of ways, and I have a few books on like Slavic magic, Bohemian magic, um, and Russian magic and things like that because I want to learn about my cultural traditions. Like when I read the book on Slavic witchcraft, I was floored because I was like, "Holy crap, this explains my family entirely." Because but so much of it was lost. My grandmother wouldn't have realized the Pisanki eggs we have, which are very common in things. They're like fertility and prosperity amulets. Every single pattern of like of cloth when you go into like when you look at Ukrainian art, every single symbol on that has a different meaning in those cloths. And the practices, a lot of that was lost through that through the lot of that was lost through the Catholic expansion through Europe. We lost a lot of our traditional healing modalities. A lot of our culture was lost. And I don't want to keep perpetuating the loss of culture and spiritual practices because bad, demon, satanic. So it's very important to me because the only cultural heritage I was raised in was the Ukrainian traditions. So, and and sadly, a lot of those are even disappearing in my lifetime. Most of my family elders are outside of my parents have passed on, and our lives are very different than they were, say, 100 and something years ago when they emigrated here. Like, I'm third generation off the boat Ukrainian. So, and not for nothing, pretty much what's going on now is why my family left. Um, you know, so like back in the late 1890s, pre and early 1900s, pre-Russian Revolution. So, um, but I just want you to challenge your assumptions on things, and I have to do it too. I am working on being a lot less judgmental. In general, I don't unless someone really kind of like gets under my skin. That's why sometimes I get irritated by the hoity-toity love and light, like, "Oh, I only walk a path of light. I don't want anything to do with the darkness and, that's, demonic scum kind of stuff." And I'm just like, whatever." Um, but like if you're gonna insult me, I'm kind of gonna get annoyed about it. But that's the thing. It's like and don't get me wrong, I see it on it's not just the love and lighters throwing shade. I see plenty of people on this side of the fence throwing shade too, and sometimes I'm guilty of it myself. Like, be the first to admit that I think the Satanic Temple is just performative activism, and goth clothing. I don't think they have anything of value to offer in spirituality. They're not spiritual. It's a non-theistic political organization, social political organization. Um, it is what it is. It's not my cup of tea. I tried to drink the tea and just didn't like the tea. It wasn't my flavor. It's not my thing. I generally again tend to not want to associate with people who insult me and or my spirituality and stuff like that. And I think it's a little icky to appropriate satanic iconography and imagery and stuff and then look down your nose at people who this is actual part of their spirituality. I think that's a little gross. Um but again, I would ask you to challenge your assumptions because you know what? I was I was a pragmatic atheist agnostic for a long ass time. So, expecting this, delving into the spirit world is a lot. So I hope you've learned something from this and at least to go forward and challenge your assumptions, learn, and again, read this damn book. I think it's required reading. You have an assignment. Get that book. It's available on Audible. If you like audiobooks, it's available on, in print, in probably Kindle and whatnot. Read it. um, yeah. So I hope people learn something from this and to not be judging others because we're kind of all on the spiritual path. And if the burning times come back, sorry, Love and Lighters, you're gonna be on the same burning on the same pile as us, satanic witchy poos. Your crystals and whatnot aren't gonna save you from that. So it's time that we stop being super, exclusionary and looking down our noses at the spiritual practices of others, because often that is kind of rooted in some very not so great things. Um, yeah. So, thank you for watching. Don't forget to click like and subscribe. Be sure to follow us on social media, sign up for our e-newsletter, all that good stuff. And I love you all. Have a wonderful day. Mwah.